Hey guys, so I'm wanting to try something quite new here, and it's the first of a potential new series in the ultimate guide to chess tactics, and this is aimed at beginners and breakthrough players, so maybe up to 1300. But I really want to know what you guys think, and so please let me know in the comments to the video whether you think this is helpful. Okay, so we've got here a Lichess study, and it's got 50 different positions in it, 50 different problems for you to solve, and they will start with the easiest. They'll start with the definitions and we'll work our way up. So I'm going to work through all 50 in this video with you, but then there's also going to be the supporting Lichess study that you can then use to drill the problems for yourself, because it's really by going over it and over it many times and see how quickly you can get through it, see how far you can get depending on your level of experience and skill. Right, so let's just begin. We're going to start here with forks, and the first one is, well, what is a fork? Okay, so a fork is simply when you attack two pieces at the same time with one piece. So in this first example, we have the white pieces. Black plays pawn to b6, attacking our knight. And what do we see here? Well, the simple response is to bring our knight in to e6. We're attacking the king and the bishop at the same time. Notice that the king can't move and defend the bishop for a potential recapture, so we simply are going to win the bishop and should have a very easy position, also being a pawn up as well as a knight up. Okay, so that's one example of forks. Knights are fork specialists, probably my favorite piece in chess. Okay, let's move on to the next one. Okay, what pieces can fork? Well, in fact, in chess, every piece is capable of forking. Knights are particularly good, but in this position, for example, black plays their pawn forward here, and now what do you see? How can we attack two pieces at the same time? Well, you might notice that there's an alignment issue with this knight and this rook. The knight is undefended, the rook is also undefended, so we can play our bishop here to e5, attacking the rook, attacking the knight as well, and whatever black does, he can't move the rook to recapture the other piece, so we're simply going to win material. There we go. So that's a bishop. What other types of pieces can fork? So here, the king has just grabbed what appears to be a free pawn. But what else can you see? Think about the directions that different pieces can move. Okay, so here we can simply grab this pawn, attacking both the bishop and the king at the same time. Again, the king can't move and defend, so we're going to be up a full piece in the endgame. So that's rooks. What about this one? Different type of piece. Okay, so they've grabbed a pawn here, but the knight is undefended on e5, and you can see that queen to h5 attacks both the king with check and also attacks the knight. Now, the knight here can't move and block the check, so white's going to have to do something to get out of the check, push the pawn, push the knight, push the bishop, push the queen. Doesn't matter, whatever they do, we are going to grab this knight on this square. So queens are exceptionally powerful at forking pieces because they can move in so many different directions at once, forwards, backwards, diagonally. So now we move on to other pieces that aren't so good at forking long range, but are good at forking in a short range. So here white has just moved their queen up to the d3 square, and what do you see? This is actually a blunder that will lose material. Well, anytime you see two pieces in this configuration, they are side by side on the same rank, and there's one square between them, always have a look out for forks. Okay, the queen can defend the knight, of course, but we're going to win material because we're just going to give up a pawn here. And pawns aren't the only pieces that can fork in short range. Here, white pushes a pawn forward, trying to attack us, trying to attack our king's position. But what would you play? Well, kings are also pretty good at forking short range. Here, we are attacking both the knight and the rook. And notice that the rook can't move and defend the knight, because from this square, either the king or this pawn can actually capture the rook. So they're going to have to probably save their rook and lose the knight. Notice that in this study, there is always one best move out of everything. Okay, so now we're going to move on to some tests. So fairly basic tests. So in this position, they've just moved their knight out to here. And the clue is that you need to look at the configuration of these two rooks. Right, so this is a long L. It's like a knight's move, but it's one square elongated. And this is an example of a great knight fork. Now, pay attention to these dark squares. These are all the squares that this knight can look at, right, from that position. And if you ever see two pieces in any of these configurations, then it's time to look out for knight forks. So here it might seem, for example, that this rook can move across and actually pin the knight, so that if we take the rook, they can win our rook. But notice that if that happens, we can actually recapture on that square as well. So that one doesn't work. Okay, so what would we use for a fork here? And this is an example of a fork with check. Quite simply, it's bishop to f4. We're hitting the king. We're also hitting this undefended pawn. So what white has tried to do here is to really advance these two pawns up and attack our king's position. But with that move, pawn to h5, they've actually undefended this pawn. So when you look at every move that your opponent makes, note to yourself, what has changed? Well, what has changed is this pawn is now undefended, whereas previously it was defended with the pawn on h4. So in comes the bishop. With check, white has to get out of the check somehow. They're probably not going to block with the queen or the rook. They'll probably have to move the king away. We then win this pawn, and what's more, we've now split up these two aggressive pawns coming at us down the king side. Time for another one. So the pawn here has just advanced to c3. Again, what has changed with that move? Well, how I would go about this is to see, okay, what's changed? I mean, they really should have probably moved their bishop to d3 or something like that. Well, we see that this pawn is undefended. This bishop is undefended. Okay, what do we know about these two pieces? Well, they're on the same rank. Therefore, rook up to d2 is going to win material. And notice again, the bishop can't move and defend the pawn simply because that pawn is on a light square. Another test. So they've moved their pawn forwards to b3. Obviously, like preparing to fianchetto the bishop, but this is a mistake. What has white failed to notice? Well, just look at this dark square diagonal here. There's a line towards the king, so we can play our queen up here, forking the king and this rook, and the rook is currently undefended because white has not completed development and has failed so far to connect the rooks. So there we go, we're going to win material once more. A couple more of these. Bishop moves out here to the e3 square. What would you play here? Well, notice again, what has changed? Well, we now have a knight and a bishop on the same rank with one square between them. So simply pawn there to d4. It's defended by our knight, and we are going to win material. There you go. And another quick test here. So what would you play in this position? What do you notice? So the king's just moved down, but again, we can now move our king here to c6, hitting both the rook and the knight, and again, the rook can't move and defend the knight. So There you go. So once you drill this until you can do this every time, your ability to spot forks will improve. Now let's look at a couple of special and fun varieties that you will come across in your games. Here, black plays their knight down. It's defended by the queen. It is attacked twice, so we could capture that knight with our pawn. But in fact, there's also a discovery against the knight here, so capturing with a pawn probably doesn't make sense because the queen will take our knight, but we have something even better in this position. And you have to notice that the king and the queen are both on light squares. They are kind of, there's two squares between them diagonally, and boom, knight to e7 is what's known as a royal fork. The king has to get out of check. There's nothing that can capture the knight, therefore the king is going to have to move. You can't block a knight check. If the knight can't be captured, that king is going to move somewhere, and we're simply going to win the queen, then we're going to win the knight, and we will probably go on to win the game with ease. Even better, the royale with cheese. Okay, what do you see here? So the queen has just come to this position. What has changed with that? Well, they've undefended this pawn, so the queen could take that pawn quite happily. But if we did that, no, the queen can't take there. Bishop can't take there. So yeah, we could grab this pawn, but even better, knight takes the pawn. We are hitting the king, the queen, and the rook. So that's what's known as a family fork. When you get the royal family and the rook. Okay. Your Majesties. So what you'll see here is we could simply win the rook in this position, but there is an even better move. What else do you notice? Well, we have the king and the queen are on the same dark square diagonal. So we ask ourselves, do we have a dark squared bishop that can access that diagonal? Yes, indeed, we do. So the bishop can go here to c5 with a royal fork, and this is a bishop royal fork. Knights are particularly skilled at royal forks, but here's one using a different type of piece. And we had an example of this earlier on, where you don't just have to move a piece to an empty square in order to fork. So here we start with pushing our pawn forwards here, okay. And now there's no en passant option because we've advanced our pawn, and white can move their pawn forward here, attacking our rook. But this is about to backfire on white. What can we do? Well, we can capture the pawn with the rook. We're hitting the king and this bishop because they're on the same line. So it's all about just tuning in your awareness about alignment and patterns. Oh no! White has just come down and grabbed our pawn, right? But there is something that white has missed. What has white missed? Well, look at the last move. The queen was on this square. When the queen was on that square, she was defending the bishop on e3. So we can now just drop our queen in to g3. The king has to move, or the rook has to block. But either way, we're going to grab this bishop. Again with another check, by the way. So in the game, they move the king out of the way. We can now grab the bishop. And what's more, this comes with yet another fork on this rook on d2 and the pawn on d4 as well. And we are just doing very well indeed. Okay, so let's have another couple of goes at spotting forks. This is a really interesting one. Slightly more advanced, actually. So what do you see in this position? So this is not necessarily an immediate fork, but it's a couple of layers deep. This is more of a medium exercise. Okay, so the best move actually here is for the rook to capture on g5. We're hitting the queen and the king. Now, of course, they have a pawn, but guess what? We got a spare rook. Okay, so now we can simply win the queen. And black is going to be still in a slightly better position, but, you know, after they take the rook back, but at least we have a fighting chance in this game. Okay, let's look at another one. Now this is a really, really fascinating position. If you've been following this channel for a while, you will know what this position is called. This is the Vienna Gambit. So black has played their knight out to f6, and we've responded with f4, now threatening this pawn. Now, pawn takes f4 would be the Vienna Gambit accepted. There are ways to decline this gambit, the best move being pawn to d5. But here, black tries something else. The blunder, bishop d6. Now, this is not immediately obvious because, yes, you might see, well, we have a pawn fork here, but that pawn will be undefended on that square. But do not fear. If you ever see this, if you are a Vienna player, the move is pawn takes c5, hitting both the bishop and the knight. The bishop will recapture, but then see what else we have, right? The key thing is that this bishop is somewhat out of squares, particularly after we play pawn to d4. They can't play their bishop here now because our pawn now means that our bishop guards that square. They get captured there, they get captured there, they get captured there. So most likely move, bishop moves back, and now we do another pawn fork. So that's a beauty. Now this is one great example of getting out of a fork, and we're going to look at more of this later on. But what black has done here is to move their queen in order to pin the attacking piece. So this pawn is forking two pieces, right? But it's now in a pin, so it can't leave the e-file without putting the king in check. So what do? We can simply move our queen in front. That then breaks the pin. This pawn is no longer pinned, and then therefore we're still going to win some material one way or another. Okay, and black will simply probably lose this game. Okay, now let's use what we just learned about that the pawn fork, the slightly more advanced pawn fork, in this example. So black has just moved their knight to defend it from the c3 pawn, but they've moved it to this square. Now what's changed with that move? Well, it means that this bishop no longer has access to that escape diagonal, okay? And therefore, if we attack this bishop, where's it going to go? Okay, so it can't really capture here, it can't go there. It's really only got one good square here. So there are a couple of ways of attacking the bishop. For example, we could just push pawn to h3. Okay. Now, if the bishop retreats to its only square, then we have pawn to g4. Again, winning material and putting us in a very good position. Okay, one more go at spotting forks. So here the bishop has just moved down to d2. What do you see? As we've said, any piece on the board can fork, including His Majesty the King. Okay, kings can attack a variety of pieces that are adjacent to each other or on squares in this kind of configuration. It can't, for example, attack a queen and a bishop, or really a queen and anything. It can't attack a pair of rooks, for example, but here, rook and a bishop, rook and a knight, bishop and a knight, they are open targets for a king fork, and there we go. Right, let's have a look at getting out of forks. So it's very important, if you find yourself in a fork, to say to yourself, well, being in a fork doesn't automatically mean that I am bound to lose material. Look for all the resources that you've got on the board. So in this example, we have the black pieces. The knight comes in, right? And we say, oh no, one of my rooks. But what can you do? There are other ways to get out of forks. We've already seen pinning the forking piece. This is another one. So here, what we're going to do is we're going to launch a counterattack with one of our forked pieces. We play rook to e8. Right? It's defended by the knight here, and we are attacking the queen on e2. When the queen moves out of the way, that is white's best move. Then we can simply move our other rook out, and we have saved both rooks. Okay, so rule number one, don't panic. Let's have a look at another one. Oh no! This looks bad, right? they've just captured on f2. The knight forks our queen and our bishop, and is also threatening a discovered check when he captures one of our pieces. But what else can we do? So again, just pause if you need to and figure it out. Well, in fact, it's white that's in a winning position here, because we have another resource, even better than counterattacking a piece of higher value, is counterattacking with check. So here, the king is in some serious trouble. If the pawn takes, by the way, we have queen takes with check, driving the king into the corner, and we're going to force mate there. Like queen takes here, it's going to cause a lot of trouble. So yeah, the king really has to move into the corner, and now we can simply grab this knight. Okay, and the knight is gone. We'll probably line up our rooks, but white is in a completely winning position here. Okay, a few more examples of getting out of forks. So the knight here is attacking this pawn, which is defended by our rook, but it's attacked twice. But they're also attacking this pawn on a2, which is undefended. So if we move our king over, they can capture here. Right, so what else can we do? Well, sometimes it's possible to defend two pieces at once as well as attacking two pieces at once. So here, white's best move is knight to c3, adding a defender to both pawns. Both pawns that have just been attacked, both pawns that appear to be overwhelmed, no. We can move our knight here and defend both at once. Now this pawn is defended twice, attacked twice. It just doesn't make sense for black to capture. He'll just lose a piece. And of course here, if he captures here, he'll also lose a piece. So don't panic, look for resources. A couple more examples. Oh no! This is terrible. This is a royal fork. So who is winning in this position? Looks like we can't save our queen. And that's absolutely right, we cannot save our queen. If the king moves out of check, the queen is lost, and probably with it the game. However, we can sack the queen here. Okay, after rook takes, our king takes the rook. We've given up our queen, but in return for two good pieces, and it's actually black here that is still completely winning. We're still a piece up because we had white doesn't have a queen. So we've given up our queen for roughly equal material. Okay, so there's a desperado way of getting out of that as well. So we've won a rook and a bishop for our queen. These knights up in white's face are going to be really dominant. White also now has to focus on getting that bishop out of the way. The bishop can't even attack our knight, so we're doing very well indeed. Okay, one more about getting out of fork. So here we start with this move, rook d3. Now this is actually a mistake because we walk into a king fork. Oh no, how can we save the material? Well, again, you see the rook can't move and defend the knight. The knight is also attacked twice. So what on earth can you do? Okay, so in this example, you might be tempted to give up the rook, for example. So you might capture the pawn with check, then king takes the knight, but we've lost a piece there. A better move, forget about the rook. You don't always automatically have to move the piece of high value. Here, we can give up the rook because we're now attacking a piece of equal value to the rook. And we could go on to do all right because we're actually still a rook up. Okay, king takes the rook, we take that rook, the king comes in, we can probably get out of there with the knight. Right, now in the second half of the study, what we're going to do is we're going to practice various positions, all of which involve forks. They're going to start easy, we're going to have some medium difficulty ones, and we're going to have a few harder ones at the end. So let's do that together and see how we get on. All right. So the bishop has just captured, I think, on f5. What do we see here? So you might see that, for example, we can move the knight into this square, but that just hits the rook. That's not actually a fork. Much better than that is to spot this alignment, right? Always look at all the pieces on the board, particularly the ones of highest value, and there you might spot we have bishop f7 a royal fork, again with a bishop, that will win some serious material. Even if the queen captures bishop, we've got knight captures as well, and we should be doing very well. Here, black has just castled. So, extremely important. Always look at what changed on the board with your opponent's move. So, arguably, maybe black should have thought about castling the other way because there's no f-pawn. And when there's no f-pawn, we have an open diagonal. So is there any way that we can use that open diagonal? There absolutely is. Queen b3 comes with check, also attacking this undefended knight. So take note of any undefended pieces. They have to get out of check. And when our queen takes the knight, she's also going to be defending our knight on e5. So well done if you spotted that. More easy ones. Oh no, we're in check. In fact, there are only two legal moves here. We have king to g1. But obviously a much better move is king here. We're going to win a rook, okay? We're still not in a great position. But yeah, we could go on. We could actually go on to win here quite easily, actually, with after we take there. So again, you know, one rook can't defend the other one. The bishop's in the way. If that rook moves there, doesn't matter. He's going to lose a rook, whatever happens. Also notice that both of our rooks are on dark squares, so this bishop can't move anywhere and attack our rooks. So there you go. That's a king fork. And what do you see in this position? Kind of similar deal. King fork. Attacking the knight, attacking the rook. The rook can't defend the knight. If the rook captures here, we just capture there. Okay. A few more easy ones. Now the important thing here, of course, is that you drill this stuff. You can watch this video as many times as you like, but what you really need to be doing is using the study to drill. Okay. So this configuration, it would be great for a pawn fork, but ain't no pawn. What else can fork in that situation? We have a knight. Okay. So what happened there was that we were threatening a fork here, perhaps, right? On bishop and pawn. So knight here would have attacked this bishop and this pawn. So what white noticed was maybe we need to defend the pawn because the bishop is actually defended. But then what they missed was, of course, that they walked into another fork. And that is the danger of knights, particularly as they get up into your half or your opponent's half of the board. All right, so pawn to f4. Okay, what do we got here? Let's have a look. Okay, so have you found it? Right, the move is, it's going to be pawn e3, defended by our queen, attacking two pieces at once with a low value piece, and basically winning material. Queen can't take because our queen captures. And this is great practice for me as well. You know, I've just built this study for you guys, and you know, it's fantastic just to go over it and drill it. And so what my recommendation is go through it all, see how far you get. Your record might be to get to position 30, position 35, or chapter 35, right? If you complete it, go back to the start, do it again, see if you can get to a further chapter without making a single mistake, right? And then if you complete it, if you get all the way to the end, record how long it took for you to do that, do it again, see if you can beat your time, do it again, see if you can beat your time. So here I see a knight fork hitting the king, obviously, and the rook. The point here is that this bishop move undefended this square. Okay, so the bishop was on here and it was protecting this square. So if our knight goes in, white has bishop takes, pawn takes, and is clinging on. But after the bishop moves away, nothing to prevent us from coming in and simply winning the rook outright. Again, the king is too far away to recapture. Okay, the last one of the easies. All right, so again, king, queen on the same diagonal. Do we have an available dark squared bishop? Yes, sir, we do. Right, and that simply ends the game. I think white resigned in that position. By the way, all of these positions are from real games. Probably all from my own history. So I collect these in order to build these studies for you. Okay, let's go on to some medium ones. Right, time to flex our muscles on the medium. Okay, so I notice we can capture a pawn here for free. That attacks this knight, but that knight is defended. Also attacks this knight that is undefended, but that is not the move, obviously. So this is a slightly more advanced puzzle. This is actually to do with avoiding forks or getting out of forks, okay? So here, that with this knight move, it's not so much that we have an attacking idea. This is about defending against the fork. So what is the threat? Well, the actual threat, you have to notice that this pawn is in an absolute pin by the queen, so it is not defending this square because it can't move off the c-file without putting the king in check, and that would be illegal. So the threat is actually for the knight coming in here, attacking both the king and the queen, which is a royal fork, and the pawn can't protect. So what we have to do is we have to move the king out of the way, and that simply prevents this attacking idea. So the more you get used to spotting forks, it's not just about attacking, it's about defending as well. Okay, next one. Now this looks like a nasty skewer. Oh no, my rook, my knight, I'm going to lose one of them, right? Not so fast, okay? Now notice the rook, again, can't move to defend the knight, so that's not a resource, but we do have, bingo, a beautiful fork, and the skewer backfires on black. Next up, so let's start with just what do we see on the board. Okay, so we've got like an overwhelming attack on our knight. It's now attacked by the bishop and the queen, but it's defended only by one piece. So what is possible in this situation? So for example, if we took the knight, the queen comes out, our knight is still attacked twice. Okay, what if we capture on here though? Now the king really must capture because we're attacking both the queen and the rook. And now this leads us into another situation. All right, this knight is now pinned, okay, but it's defended by the queen. So what else can we do? Is there a way that we can attack, for example, that knight and something else that's very vulnerable? Yes, well, we can. There are actually two moves here. One is slightly better than the other. Queen f3 check means the king could actually escape back to e8. Queen h5 check hits the king, okay? The king can't move back that way, so what's he going to do, right? And we are also attacking the knight, so we're simply going to win material. Even if the pawn pushes forwards, we capture here, and that is a very unpleasant situation. So here, first thing that we notice is black has just lined up two rooks against our rook here. Now, is our rook defended? Well, yes, it is defended twice. So what do we have to do? Okay, we don't have to panic about that attack. A lot of us, as beginners, will notice an attack and think, I must respond to that attack. Well, no, you don't, because sometimes you've got something eviler that you can do to your opponent. And what do we have that's evil here? Exactly, we have a pawn fork. But what do you mean we have a pawn fork? Well, look at the king and knight, right? And pawns, if they're still on their starting square, can move forward 2 squares, and there we go, right? We don't have to worry about this at all. This comes with check. The king is going to have to get out of check. It can't capture its way out. It can't go here, it can't go here, it can't go here. It's going to have to move, and we're going to win the knight. So, tough little one here. White is actually in a winning position at this point, but hold my beer, says white. Okay, they move in with the knight. Looks like a great outpost square, right? They're attacking our queen. So what do we have in this position? Well, looking around at everything on the board, okay, you never panic. You never say, oh no, my queen, right? Unless it's with an evil laugh. So we notice that this pawn, for example, is pinned on g2, right? Because we have a semi-open g file, and we have our rook is in line with a king. Therefore, we have this resource knight f3 check. Okay, so the king is going to have to move. The pawn can't take, and there's no way of blocking a knight check, as we've already said. So the king is now going to have to move. And now what? If we simply take the queen, we lose our queen with a knight fork, right? So that's terrible, okay? So that is not the move. The move is actually queen to e5. White's queen is still threatened. And if the pawn takes here, we have bishop takes with check. Queen guards this square, the bishop guards there, the rook guards there. So that's a pretty tough one, guys, I have to say. But well done if you figured that one out. So do remember to pause and work it right through. Okay. Black simply develops their knight. They're thinking, okay, my knight's under attack, but I can just develop, right? This happens all the time. Be switched on for it. Okay. And so, yeah, the knight's defended here. Not a problem. Well, it is a problem. Right, you need to notice this pattern. It's very common. You can take the knight. If this pawn captures, we have bishop captures with a bishop fork on king and rook. So terrible stuff. Okay, a few more mediums. Now, there's a type of fork that becomes incredibly important in endgames. Okay, so in this position, white has just moved their pawn forwards. And white's actually one pawn down, but is threatening to promote. Now, if we move our king here to g6, then white will promote with a queen and check, and will just crush us. So we have to play this move, okay, to cover the promotion square. It's absolutely essential. Now, when they move their pawn forward, what do? Well, this is a brilliant example of a king fork in the endgame, right? These kings are close quarter fighters. We're attacking the rook. Okay, if the rook goes there, we win the pawn. If the rook comes here with check, we win that pawn. Okay, and white actually resigned in this position, but probably could have played on for a draw. Okay, a couple more. Knight comes in, right, to a nice outpost. But we have to say, well, what else has changed with that move? Okay, so the knight is moved from this square. What does that mean? Well, look at this knight here, right? It's in a pin because of our bishop. So that knight now can't move. So now we can come in here with our knight hitting this rook and hitting this knight that can't get out of the way because it's pinned. And that was simply the best move. So again, good if you found that. So if the rook moves, we're simply going to take the knight. Queen can't take, king can't take because it'd be in check. So let's say rook moves here. We can take the knight, attack the rook, attack the bishop, threaten to move the knight with an attack on the queen, or move the knight back and actually defend the bishop with an attack on the queen. So let me know how you get on with these. Are they about the right level? Are they challenging enough? Are they too challenging? We shall see. Okay. Bishop moves to here. Okay, so what I'm noticing is king and queen are in line here. The bishop has actually moved, yeah, it's got out of the pawn's attack, but it's moved to another undefended square. And so knight to g5, to me, gives check and attacks this bishop, taking advantage of the fact that this pawn here is not defending that g4 square because it's in a pin by our queen. There we go. Okay, so that's the medium ones. Are you ready for a bit of hard problems? All right. Now, there's one good move here for white. And again, pause and see if you can find it for yourself. But this is actually it's to do with this move here, right? And notice when the bishop moves there, it's 2 squares away horizontally from the knight. And so the move here is to capture the bishop on b6, hitting the rook, right? And it doesn't matter if queen takes, pawn takes, whatever. Here, queen takes, and then bang. A pawn fork, we're going to win material. So, toughie. And the point is that you don't always have to be able to figure all of these out, right? Even just learning the position so that you memorize it, it still burns it into your pattern recognition in a way. Right? So even if you can't figure it out, go back, just keep doing it. Okay, so here, the rook has moved here, right? And again, this is a king-rook fork issue. We can capture this pawn here, and if the pawn takes, bishop takes, bang. Not nice, precious, at all. Okie doke. Now, there's a critical move here. And what are we looking at? Pause and find it. Right, so the issue here is we are not attacking, right? Here we have to defend against the fork, and the danger is, ouch, knight c3, pang, 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 hitting our king and both rooks at once. That would be absolutely terrible. How on earth do we defend against that? Well, if we move this rook, it can't cover this square. The only way to defend is rook to c5, the only good move. Well done. If you found it. Okay. So, they've just moved b6. So what do we see about that move? Well, they're preparing to fianchetto, but you've got to time that very well. Now, this obviously doesn't work because they can just push the c-pawn and block. Okay, so what are we looking at here? I'm thinking that the queen has good access to light squares as well. So our queen, for example, could come out threatening mate. And let's see what happens in that case. It's not that move. It's not that move. I didn't find it. Oh, it's even worse. Okay, it's a sacrifice. Bishop takes f7 check. The king really has to take. And now the queen comes out to h5 with check. So notice, in that previous position, the king can't retreat, so it's either the king is going to come out into the board, but now we have this winning the rook. Very, very nasty. What an evil trick, it says. Quite right, Hunty. You're absolutely right. Okay, black is simply better here, unless we can find one good resource. Well, what could it be? You see, our rook is under attack, and these two pawns side by side are covering all four of these squares on that fourth rank. If our rook advances, it gets eaten by the knight, and we can't even recapture because the rook will take our queen, so that's terrible. However, we can capture here. All right, and now we simply push the pawn forwards to d5, hitting the knight, hitting the queen. They counterattack. We can take the queen. They take, we win the rook. Ooh. Oh, it's not the best recapture. Is it knight takes? Knight takes, because after they take here, we recapture with our knight. And we do have a small edge, but black was in a better position at the start of that. So you can see, for me, I've just made this, right? But I can drill and drill and drill this. You can go back to the same position. Okay, I'm going to take and try and understand the whys and the wherefores. Okay, there's a pawn fork. Now I can take the queen. They take the queen. If I take with the rook, pawn takes. Now, and then I can only recapture with the pawn, right? And also with black having a dark squared bishop, so that's not ideal. But this knight takes. They capture the pawn. I can recapture with a knight. My pawns are not then splintered, and we still have this advanced pawn here. We are one pawn up, in fact, because of this guy. So it's all about protecting Eddie. So there we go. Couple more. Okay, no clues here. There's no hint. Queen has just moved here. Okay, I see it. So this is a combination tactic, as many of the harder ones are. So this combines a knight fork with the idea of a sacrifice and deflection, or attraction even. So bishop takes f7 once again. King takes, bang. And that is pretty. And let's go on to the very final one. Alright, so let's take stock. 1, 2, 3, 4 pawns. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pawns. So we've got our work cut out here. And I think we've just lost our queen, haven't we? Yes, but we can actually save ourselves to some extent with king here. The rook can't defend the pawn, it can't go here. So although we might lose this pawn, we're going to get a pawn back. We are still in the game at the very least. So guys, let me know. Let me know what you think of this setup, because this might turn into something a bit special, right? But again, the point is, go through the video, that's fine. But more importantly, follow the link in the description to the Lichess study. It's a public study. You can go, you can drill it as many times as you want. You can jump between the chapters. You can replay the chapters, okay? Let me know in these comments if this is a format that you guys think would be useful for you. So go ahead and practice. And let me know if you get better. Let me know if you get better at your forks. Okay, thank you for watching. I'll see you later.